At first, Liberal Senator, former ABC journalist herself, Sarah Henderson, moved a motion last night in the Senate to establish a parliamentary inquiry into her former employer amid concerns of a lack of impartiality and accuracy at the ABC. Unfortunately, that motion was voted down this afternoon. I'm pleased to say, though, Sarah Henderson joins me now. You've been inside the belly of the beast, Sarah. You're a journalist, you're a lawyer, you're now obviously a parliamentarian. Why is this inquiry so important to you?
Well, Peter, good evening. And it was very disappointing that the motion to establish an inquiry into the ABC's obligations to be impartial and accurate when disseminating news and information was voted down today. There have been many times when the ABC has failed the impartiality test. The ABC also does do some very good work. I don't step away from that at all, Peter. But one of the big issues is that there is a statutory obligation to comply with the fact that every report, every bit of news and information must be accurate and impartial. And when there have been these very big failings, the government and the Minister for Communications basically turn a blind eye. So we wanted to inquire into this to look at other matters such as the complaints mechanism, the training of journalists, producers, editors and the like. We've seen some pretty shocking fails. Even recently, the doctoring of the photograph involving Jane Hume, the hectoring of Susan Lee in an interview she did last week on the 7:30 programme. She was interrupted 35 times by Sarah Ferguson. So the ABC needs to be its very best at all times and, as I say, very disappointed that this inquiry is not proceeding.
You know, we've got the census questions out for the census due next year, and there's a whole lot of stuff in there about, you know, sexuality and the sex of the person you're attracted to. I don't understand how that's relevant to government making policy, but there it is in the questions. But also I have to say, you know, why don't we have a question there? Do you watch the ABC and do you want to pay for it? And based on how many people then tick a box, we fund them accordingly, because I don't think they warrant $1 billion. They do not have the audience share.
Well, Peter, I am a very strong supporter of public broadcasting and the ABC, and including the public funding of the ABC. But I have no issue with that question being asked, of course. I don't think the government is well disposed to that. But I am very concerned about some of the questions which are emerging in the census in relation to gender identity, because this government clearly has no interest in supporting the rights of women to be safe in single-sex spaces, the rights of women and girls to compete against each other in sport. We've now seen the terrible outcome in the federal court case, the Tickle versus Giggle case, where basically the definition of a woman has been completely expunged from the Sex Discrimination Act. So what I'm concerned about, Peter, we're seeing this activism become more and more aggressive, and the rights of women to have those safe, protected spaces, including the Lesbian Action Group, which has a separate court proceeding now in the federal court after it was denied the right to gather in a women's only group. I mean, this is out of control, and I have called very strongly for law reform, particularly in the wake of the interpretation of the Sex Discrimination Act by the federal court.
And look, you have been, from day one, you were a terrific supporter of Moira Deeming on this very issue, but in a raft of federal areas, Sarah, you've been outspoken when your party was, I think, too silent, particularly prior to the last election. And we saw on Monday, you know, yes, it was a stunt, Pauline Hanson going in the Burqa, sure. But I mean, I worked in the Senate for 10 years. You've been there a while. The Senate is full of stunts. Put that to one side. I mean, the pile-on about Hanson, I think, was reprehensible, and it obscured the point she was making. Why can't we, in Australia, have a debate about the most oppressive garb that a woman can ever be forced to wear, where her eyes are covered, her face is covered, her expression, her humanity is obscured? It's the most oppressive garb in the world. Only women are ever forced to wear it. You never see a man in a burqa, unless they're trying to do something dodgy, I suppose. But if the Portuguese Parliament can have this debate only last month, and they had the debate and they ended up banning the burqa. Some 20 other countries have banned the burqa. A lot of them, majority Muslim countries. Why can't we have the debate here in Australia?
Well, Peter, I agree. We should have been able to have that debate, and it's very regrettable that someone denied in the Senate, not, of course, the coalition, denied Pauline Hanson the right to introduce her private senator's bill to debate the banning of the burqa. Every single senator has the right to introduce private senator's bill, but too often we've seen Labor and the crossbench step in and stop those rights being exercised by every single senator. It's also happened to Senator Antic in relation to matters of gender activism, and that's disgraceful. So we strongly opposed the decision made to stop Pauline Hanson debating her private senator's bill, and we also opposed the censure motion against Pauline Hanson, but that wasn't clear because Senator Hanson decided not to call a division, I think quite deliberately, to be fair. And of course, our position in relation to the censure motion was therefore not evident on the floor of the Senate. Look, it was the use of a prop. Props are not in order, but I think underlying that, Pauline Hanson was pretty angry and she had the right to be angry.
Well, good on you, Sarah. Good on you, because some of your colleagues aren't as frank about their support for women here on this issue in particular. I'll leave it there. Thank you.